Last spring, my brother Marcus stood in our family's dying apple orchard and said, "We need to sell this place. There's nothing left here worth saving." I was about to agree with him. The farm had been losing money for years, and neither of us knew the first thing about running an orchard. But then I decided to take one last look from above using a drone. When I saw the aerial footage, my hands started shaking. The pattern of dead and living trees in the orchard spelled out a name in perfect letters, visible only from the sky. Lily! That's my name! And I had no idea how or why the trees had been planted to spell it. But here's what I didn't know. Those trees were hiding a secret my grandfather had kept for 60 years. A secret about my real identity, a promise he'd made to a dying woman, and a fortune hidden somewhere on the property that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Lily Chen, and I'm about to tell you the most incredible story of my life. This isn't just about a mysterious orchard or a family farm. It's about discovering that sometimes the land we inherit holds more than just memories. It holds truths that have been waiting decades to be revealed. By the end of this story, you'll understand that family legacies are more complex than we imagine, that love can transcend generations, and that sometimes the things we're ready to throw away are actually the most valuable things we'll ever own. To understand why seeing my name spelled in trees was so shocking, you need to know about our family farm and the grandfather who left it to us. My grandfather, James Chen, bought the apple orchard in 1962 when he immigrated from China. He spent 60 years building it into a successful business, selling apples to local markets and making cider that won awards at county fairs. But Grandpa James died last year at 92, and he left the farm to Marcus and me, his only grandchildren. The problem was, neither of us wanted it. Marcus was a software engineer in Seattle, and I was a graphic designer in Portland. We'd both left the small town of Willow Creek years ago and had no intention of coming back. When we inherited the farm, it was already in decline. Grandpa had been too old to maintain it properly in his final years, and many of the trees were diseased or dying. The equipment was outdated, the farmhouse needed major repairs, and the property taxes were astronomical. "We should just sell it," Marcus said. I agreed. It seemed like the practical choice. But there was something about the idea of selling that bothered me. Grandpa James had loved this land more than anything. He'd poured his entire life into it. "Let's at least spend a few weeks here," I suggested. "Go through his things, fix the place up a bit before we sell. We owe him that much." Marcus reluctantly agreed. We arrived at the farm in early April, just as the apple trees were beginning to bloom. The property was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. The old white farmhouse with the wraparound porch, the red barn that leaned slightly to the left, and row after row of gnarled apple trees stretching across 20 acres. But it was also sadder than I remembered. Paint was peeling from the house, weeds had overtaken the gardens, and many of the trees were clearly dead or dying. "This is worse than I thought," Marcus said, surveying the damage. "We're going to have to price this really low to find a buyer." We spent the first few days cleaning out the farmhouse, sorting through 60 years of accumulated possessions. Grandpa had been a pack rat, keeping everything from old newspapers to broken tools. In Grandpa's bedroom, I found a locked wooden box in the back of his closet. The key was on his keychain, which the funeral home had given us with his other personal effects. Inside the box were old photographs, letters written in Chinese, and a leather journal with 1962 written on the cover. I opened the journal and found it was written in English, Grandpa's handwriting, but younger and less shaky than I remembered. The first entry was dated April 15th, 1962. "Today, I bought the orchard, 20 acres of apple trees and a dream. But I'm not just building a farm. I'm building a promise to Lily that I will keep her memory alive even if no one else remembers her name." I stared at the entry, confused. Who was this Lily that Grandpa was writing about? My mother had named me Lily, but I'd always assumed it was just a name she liked. I flipped through more pages. The journal was filled with entries about planting trees, learning about apple cultivation, and building the business. But scattered throughout were references to Lily and the promise. One entry from 1965 read, "Today I planted the last of the trees in the pattern. It took 3 years, but it's finally complete. From the ground, no one will ever know, but from above, her name will live forever in the earth." What pattern? What was Grandpa talking about? I showed the journal to Marcus that evening. "This is weird," he said, reading the entries. "Who was this other Lily? I have no idea. Mom never mentioned anyone named Lily in Grandpa's past. Maybe it was a sister who died or a first wife. Grandpa was married to Grandma for 50 years. There was no first wife." Marcus shrugged. "Well, whatever it was, it's ancient history. We still need to sell this place." But I couldn't let it go. The next morning, I borrowed a drone from a neighbor who used it for surveying his crops. "I just want to see the property from above," I told Marcus. "Get some aerial shots for the real estate listing." I launched the drone and watched the live feed on my phone as it rose above the orchard. At first, I just saw rows of trees, some green and blooming, others brown and dead. But as the drone climbed higher, a pattern began to emerge.
The dead and dying trees weren't randomly scattered. They formed letters, clear, deliberate letters that spelled out a name, Lily. The letters were enormous, each one at least 50 feet tall, formed by the strategic placement of trees that had been allowed to die while others were kept alive. I gasped and nearly dropped my phone. "Marcus, Marcus, come look at this." He ran over and I showed him the drone footage. "Holy shit," he whispered. "Is that your name?" Grandpa planted the trees to spell my name, but I wasn't even born when he bought this farm. How does he know? We stared at the screen, watching the drone circle over the orchard, the name Lily clearly visible from above. We spent the rest of the day going through Grandpa's papers, looking for any explanation. We found old deeds, tax records, and business documents, but nothing that explained the mysterious Lily from his journal. Finally, in a box of photographs, I found a picture that made everything click into place. It was a black and white photo from the 1950s, showing a young Chinese woman standing in front of a building with Chinese characters on the sign. On the back, in Grandpa's handwriting, it said, "Lily Wong, San Francisco, 1958. The woman in the photo looked exactly like me. "Marcus, look at this." He studied the photo, then looked at me. That's uncanny. She could be your twin. Who was she?" I called my mother in California. "Mom, did Grandpa ever mention someone named Lily Wong?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, where did you hear that name?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "I found Grandpa's journal and a photo. Mom, who was she?" Another long pause. "Lily Wong was your grandfather's first love. They were engaged to be married in San Francisco in 1959.
My mother told me a story I'd never heard before. Grandpa James had come to San Francisco from China in 1955, working in restaurants and saving every penny. He met Lily Wong in 1957. She was the daughter of a shopkeeper in Chinatown, beautiful and kind, with dreams of becoming a teacher. They fell in love and got engaged in 1958. They planned to marry in the spring of 1959 and start a life together. But in February 1959, Lily was diagnosed with leukemia. In those days, there was no effective treatment. She died 3 months later, just weeks before their wedding. Grandpa was devastated, my mother said. He left San Francisco and moved to Oregon, trying to escape the memories. That's when he bought the farm. But, Mom, why did he name the orchard after her? And why did you name me Lily? Because on her deathbed, Lily made your grandfather promise something.
What did she make him promise? She made him promise that he would live a full life, that he would find love again, and that someday, if he had a granddaughter, he would name her Lily so that her name would live on. I felt tears streaming down my face. So I'm named after her? I look like her? Marcus, do you realize what this means? What? Grandpa didn't just leave us a farm. He left us a legacy, a love story, a promise kept for 60 years. Marcus nodded slowly. We can't sell this place, can we? No, we can't. But there was still something that didn't make sense. I went back to Grandpa's journal and found an entry from 1970. Today, I buried the box in the place where her name begins. Someday, when the right Lily finds it, she'll understand everything. She'll know what to do with what I've left behind. Marcus, there's something buried here, something Grandpa left for me to find. Where her name begins. What does that mean? I pulled up the drone footage again and studied the pattern of trees. The letter L. That's where her name begins. We need to dig at the first tree in the letter L.
The next morning, we went to the orchard with shovels. Using the drone footage as a guide, we identified the tree that formed the top of the letter L, an old apple tree that was still alive and blooming. We started digging at the base of the tree. About 3 feet down, my shovel hit something solid. It was a metal box, rusted but intact. We pulled it out of the ground and brushed off the dirt. The box was locked, but the lock was so rusted that Marcus was able to break it open with a hammer. Inside were 3 things: a letter addressed to My Lily, a small velvet box, and a thick envelope marked Property Deed. I opened the letter with shaking hands. It was dated January 2022, just a few months before Grandpa died. My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, it means you found the box. It means you saw your name written in the trees and understood that this farm is more than just land and apples. I bought this orchard in 1962 to honor the memory of the woman I loved and lost. I planted the trees in the pattern of her name so that even after I was gone, she would be remembered. But I also built this farm for you, the granddaughter I knew would someday carry her name and her spirit. I've watched you grow into a woman who looks like her, who has her kindness and her strength, and I know that you're the one who should inherit not just this farm, but the secret I've kept for 60 years. The letter continued. When Lily Wong died, her father gave me something, a gift that he said belonged to our future together. It was a jade necklace that had been in the Wong family for generations, worth a considerable sum. I couldn't bear to sell it or wear it, so I kept it hidden all these years. It's in the velvet box. But there's more. In 1965, I discovered something on this property that I never told anyone about. While digging to plant trees, I found a vein of rare earth minerals running through the northern section of the land. I had it quietly assessed, and the geologist told me it was worth millions. But I never minded. I kept it secret, waiting for the right time, the right person. That person is you, Lily. The property deed in this box gives you sole ownership of the mineral rights to this land. Marcus gets the farm and the house, but the minerals are yours. Use this gift to build the life that my Lily never got to live. Travel, create, love, dream, do all the things she would have done if she'd had more time. And please, keep the orchard alive. Keep her name growing in the earth. With all my love, your Grandpa James. I opened the velvet box with trembling hands. Inside was the most beautiful jade necklace I'd ever seen, an intricate carving of a phoenix, the symbol of rebirth, on a delicate gold chain. Lily, do you know what this means? Marcus asked, reading over my shoulder. It means Grandpa left me a fortune. It means he left you a responsibility. He's asking you to keep this place alive. I looked out at the orchard. at the trees that spelled my name, at the land that held 60 years of love and loss and hope. I can't do this alone, Marcus. I don't know anything about running a farm. Then we'll learn together. I'll move back. We'll hire people who know what they're doing. We'll restore this place. But your job in Seattle can be done remotely. Lily, this is bigger than a job. This is our family's legacy. We contacted a geological survey company to assess the mineral deposits on the property. The geologist confirmed what Grandpa's letter had said. There was indeed a significant vein of rare earth minerals running through the northern 20 acres. These minerals are used in electronics, renewable energy technology, and medical devices, the geologist explained. The deposit on your property is worth approximately $12 million. $12 million. I could barely process the number. However, the geologist continued, mining these minerals would require excavating a significant portion of your orchard. You'd have to remove most of the trees. I looked at Marcus. We both knew what that meant. We're not mining it. What? The geologist looked confused. We're not mining the minerals. The orchard stays. Marcus pulled me aside. Lily, are you sure? That's $12 million. I'm sure. Grandpa kept this secret for 60 years because he knew that mining it would destroy the orchard. He left me the mineral rights not so I would mine them, but so I could choose to protect the land. But the money, the jade necklace alone is worth enough to restore the farm and keep it running for years. We don't need the mineral money. We need to honor Grandpa's promise. Marcus smiled. You sound just like him. Over the next year, Marcus and I threw ourselves into restoring the farm. We used money from selling the jade necklace to hire experienced orchard managers, replace diseased trees, update equipment, and repair the farmhouse. We learned everything we could about apple cultivation, cider making, and sustainable farming practices. We started a farm-to-table program, selling directly to restaurants in Portland and Seattle. We also started giving tours of the orchard, telling visitors about Grandpa James and his love story, about the name written in the trees that could only be seen from above. The story went viral on social media. People came from all over the country to see the Orchard of Love, to take drone footage of the name spelled in trees, to hear about the immigrant who had kept a 60-year-old promise. One day in September, an elderly Chinese woman came to the farm asking for a tour. She introduced herself as Margaret Wong. I'm Margaret Wong's younger sister, she said. I heard about your orchard on the news, and I had to come see it. I invited her into the farmhouse and showed her Grandpa's journal, the photographs, and the letter he'd left me. Margaret cried as she read them. I was only 10 when my sister died, but I remember James. He was so heartbroken. After the funeral, he disappeared, and we never heard from him again. My family always wondered what happened to him. We hoped he'd found happiness. He did, I told her. He married my grandmother, had children, built this farm, but he never forgot Lily. Margaret smiled through her tears. My sister would have loved this. She would have loved that her name is growing in the earth, that another Lily is keeping her memory alive. Margaret and I stayed in touch. She introduced me to other members of the Wong family, cousins I never knew I had, connected to me through the woman's name I carried. They embraced Marcus and me as family, sharing stories about Lily Wong, showing us photographs, teaching us about our shared heritage. You look so much like her, Margaret told me. Not just your face, but your spirit. She was kind and strong and determined, just like you. I felt a connection to this woman I'd never met, this woman's name I carried, whose love story had shaped my entire life without me knowing it.
Today, 2 years after we almost sold the farm, the orchard is thriving. We've planted new trees to replace the dead ones, but we've maintained the pattern. The name Lily is still visible from above, now spelled in blooming apple trees instead of dead ones. We've turned the farmhouse into a bed and breakfast where guests can stay and learn about the farm's history. We host weddings in the orchard, telling couples about the love story that inspired it all. we've created a scholarship fund in Lily Wong's name, helping young Chinese-American women pursue careers in education, the dream she never got to fulfill. And every spring, when the apple trees bloom, we hold a ceremony to honor both Lilies, the one who died too young and the one who lived to tell her story. As for the $12 million in mineral rights, I've placed them in a conservation trust. The minerals will never be mined, and the land will be protected in perpetuity. Some people think I'm crazy for walking away from that much money, but I know I made the right choice. Grandpa James didn't leave me those mineral rights so I could get rich. He left them so I could choose love over money, legacy over profit, memory over convenience. This experience has taught me that the things we inherit from our families are more than just property or money. We inherit stories, promises, and responsibilities. Grandpa James spent 60 years keeping a promise to a dying woman. He built a business, raised a family, and lived a full life, but he never forgot his first love. And by planting her name in trees, by leaving clues for me to find, he ensured that her memory would live on long after he was gone. Marcus and I have both moved back to Willow Creek permanently. He works remotely for his tech company and helps manage the farm's business operations. I've started a design studio in town, creating branding for local farms and businesses. We've found a life here we never expected, a life connected to the land, to our family's history, to a love story that transcends time. Every morning I walk through the orchard and think about the two Lilies, the one who died in 1959 and the one who was born 30 years later to carry on her name. I think about Grandpa James, who loved so deeply that he spent 60 years honoring a promise. And I think about how close we came to selling this place, to destroying this legacy, to never knowing the truth.
But there's one more thing about this story that I haven't told you yet, something I discovered just last month that makes me believe Grandpa's love story is even more extraordinary than I realized. Because when I was going through the last boxes of Grandpa's papers, I found a letter from Lily Wong to James, written just days before she died. In it, she wrote, "My dearest James, I know I'm dying, and I know you'll want to die with me, but I'm asking you to live. Live fully, love again, build something beautiful. And someday, if you have a granddaughter, name her Lily, not to replace me, but to remind you that love doesn't end with death. It transforms, it grows, it blooms again in new forms. I'll be watching over you, my love, and when you plant your orchard, plant it in the shape of my name so that I can see it from heaven. I'll be there in every blossom, every harvest, every spring. Wait for me, James. We'll be together again someday. Your Lily." Grandpa James had followed her instructions exactly. He'd planted the orchard in the shape of her name so she could see it from above. And now, 60 years later, another Lily walks through that orchard, keeping the promise alive. The trees spell my name, but they also spell hers. And in that way, we're both alive in the earth, both remembered, both loved. That's not just a legacy, that's immortality. But there's something else in that letter that I haven't figured out yet. In the very last line, Lily Wong wrote, "P.S. The phoenix knows where the real treasure is buried. When the time is right, she'll show you." The phoenix. The jade necklace I sold was carved in the shape of a phoenix. I've been researching the symbolism, studying the necklace's design in photographs, trying to understand what Lily meant. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that Grandpa James and Lily Wong left nothing to chance. Every clue has meaning. Every message has a purpose. And I have a feeling that the $12 million in minerals isn't the real treasure Lily was talking about. There's something else hidden on this property. Something that Lily Wong knew about. Something she wanted James to find. Something that's been waiting 60 years for the right person to discover it. The phoenix knows where the real treasure is buried. And I'm going to find out what that means.